George, for that peace candle reflection on something so incredible that you got to experience. And yeah, maybe it will come closer to home, that we can experience it too. Thank you, Ray, for sharing the scripture readings with us this morning, and the choir for such a beautiful piece. We really appreciate it. So much brings this service to a sense of deep meaning and purpose for our lives. It touches every one of us. And so I so appreciate all of the voices, the thoughts, the prayers, the music, all that comes together here in this place. Maybe take a moment of silence as we settle our hearts and our minds to reflect once again on God's Word. Thank you. I imagine that some of us in this room have heard that story of Martha and Mary in the past, and perhaps have your opinion on what it all means and about who was doing what, and maybe relating to some of them. I would imagine there are a lot of Marthas in this room. Busy, 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 right? And so I imagine that those who can relate to Martha really could understand what her complaint. She came out, and there is Mary, her sister, kind of sitting around Jesus' feet, listening to what he was saying, and she's busy in the kitchen preparing everything. And so, and I imagine when she brought that to Jesus' attention, there was probably a little bit of a pang of disappointment when Jesus seems to have sided with Mary and saying, Martha, Martha, you worry about so much, stop fretting. You know, Mary's made a better choice. Ouch, right? I don't know how that felt. And some of you who are Martha and relate to the Martha story might totally be on the side of Martha feeling like, yeah, what's that? What's that? You know, I'm doing all the work and Mary's sitting there. But I ask us today to look at this passage a little differently. I invite you to join with me in taking another approach to the story, that together we might see something deeper and affirming in both of those choices, in Martha's and in Mary's. I know that the passage has Jesus saying that Mary has chosen the better, what is better, and that won't be taken from her. But you know, when we translate words from the ancient text, there's often not a clean, clear translation. And so it's also been reflected on that that word for better may also have just been good. Mary chose something that was not necessarily better, but what was good. In that light, things take on a different understanding. It does not mean that Martha's busyness in the kitchen was a poor choice or a bad choice, nor that Mary's was the right one or the better one, but rather a good one for her in that moment in her life. Each had made choices that were important to them. Now bear with me, I'm not trying to justify because I'm one of those doers out there that get annoyed with people that just sit, because it's good to do both. Martha was doing a good thing. I mean, somebody needed to provide food, right? Someone comes along and you invite him into your home. If you're all just sitting there, nobody's getting fed. So she jumped to the task that she was comfortable with. And she got right in with a real positive intention of providing a meal and bringing those who had gathered together around the table. But what changes when she went in and she saw Mary sitting there. And that stole her away from her original selfless intent. Martha became distracted from her purpose. She became resentful. And the issue arises when Martha's focus changed, when she became angry and resentful toward Mary. No longer was she preparing the meal in a sense of a positive sense of joyfulness and loving service, but rather resentment and a sense of negativity. I wonder if she was out there banging things around in the kitchen, annoyed and frustrated. We've been there. We know this. A commentary on this passage entitled Learning from Martha says it's not what they did, it's the attitude that they did it with. So what matters most then is not whether we are sitting at Jesus' feet or serving Jesus dinner. What matters is why we are doing what we are doing and the attitude we have while doing it. Are we doing it free from distractions and anxieties and hidden resentments? Are we doing it out of love? Richard L. Floyd points out that there is a wonderful Greek word that I am just not going to try to say because I didn't get a chance to listen to that on Google how you pronounce things, but it's one of these Greek words that Luke uses in this passage to describe Martha's distractions. And the word literally means to be pulled away or to be pulled apart. That's what distractions do, don't they? They pull us apart. And they pull us away from what really matters. And how easily the tide can change, and that positive attitude that we started out with shifts to something less and unfulfilling. We become resentful instead of the joy that we started out with. Distractions are a part of our lives, like pulling our phones out to read the news. I'm not going to question how many of you pull your phones out on a regular basis to check on the news, to check on who's communicating with you. We all do it. Or turn on the television or the radio, only to be pulled away and perhaps pulled apart from wherever we were emotionally and physically and what we see and what we hear. I believe that being distracted from what is truly important is becoming an increasing crisis in our lives. The more we have the ability to connect to all that is taking place in our world, which in one way seems so wonderful, and yet the more worry and the more fear, the more dis-ease filters into our lives and leaves us deeply unsettled. Of course there is wonderful news about kindness and compassion, of folks doing the right thing and caring for others and for the earth, but those don't always make the headlines as readily as the negative stuff does. I'm sure you would agree with me. And we can become so quickly overwhelmed. And it is that overwhelm that creates distraction, that leads to taking our focus away from the important things of life, that often finds us losing our direction along the way. And I can personally vouch for that as I was driving down the road just recently. I was off to an appointment in a place I've been to countless times, driving down the road, dealing with some stuff that was in my head that I was trying to sort out, going along, totally missed the turn, didn't realize until minutes down the road, it was too late to try to turn around and redirect, so I found my way otherwise. But because I was distracted by all the things going on and not focused. Now, I suppose I could have put my GPS system on in my car right from the very beginning, and that would have talked me through all the turns I needed to make, and I wouldn't have had to worry about any of that. But then sometimes I wonder if I become so reliant on that, do I stop thinking things through? Do I stop being tuned in? And do I stop being aware? Well, obviously that day I was. Several years ago, I have to remember that when Ted and I had the business up at the farm and people were coming to see the bison and buy some meat and things from the store, a van arrived, a rental van, caked in mud on its tires and mud splattered on the sides of the car, the vehicle. And when the people piled out, you could see that they were visibly shaking, especially the one who was driving, the father. They were staying somewhere up in Bethel, and they had put into their GPS system in the car the destination to our farm. They wanted to come and visit. And clearly a sensible thing to do when you don't know where you're going, right? I mean, every one of us probably does that, whether it's in our phone or do it in a car. We plug it in so we know the route. However, in rural areas, that doesn't always work very well, as you might know. You've traveled around this place. GPS isn't always accurate when there's a lot of old lanes and dirt roads. Some of the dirt roads are pretty well maintained. Others have been left to rewild. Needless to say, their adventure from Bethel to Waterford was an experience that they will never, ever forget, I am sure. The man recalls driving down the road, and it's getting narrow. It's a dirt road, and it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower and harder to journey across. I'm not sure whether they tried to figure out how to turn around, back up, whatever they did. They were so relieved when they finally got to civilization on our farm, and we gave them specific directions on how to get back. But it took them over places that nobody uses anymore. And I imagine that experience taught them something, though, about the importance of relying on their own abilities, their own intellect, their own observation and awareness, and perhaps even tucking a road map or a gazetteer into their bags the next time they do a road trip. You see, out here, if you have any GPS systems, sometimes there's not a signal, and that happened to them as well. They thought they were gone for good. Whenever we step away from our own knowledge and intuition, we can so easily lose our way. A quote from Ken Jennings brought me to chuckle, because I can relate to this one too. He said, "If I start outsourcing all my navigation to a little talking box in my car, I'm in trouble. I'm going to lose my car in the parking lot every time." Because we're not thinking, we're not tuned in. Indeed, we no longer pay that close attention. Yet, even more so is the reality of the onslaught of information available at a moment's notice, whether real or fake, positive or negative, right or wrong, making discernment a challenge in a very confusing manner. This constant flow of fact or fiction takes from us in ways we don't always realize, pulling us from what really matters and eroding our own confidence and our ability to make good and positive choices that align with our faith. All the noise and distractions entice us away from the core of who we are, away from our soul, that connection with our soul, away from what really matters, which is to live into the ways of loving kindness and goodness that rests at the very core of who we are. That's why taking moments such as this here today, to simply be without doing, are vital to our well-being. Anytime we block out the noise and listen to God's still small voice speaking within us, whether it is in meditation, in prayer, in worship, in song or silence, whether it is in church, at home, outdoors, on the street corner, wherever and whenever we make that time, we're making a choice that is good for our souls. That is not to discredit what it means to be doing and serving as well. The late preacher Fred Craddock put it this way: there is a time to go and do, and there is a time to listen and reflect. Knowing which is a matter of spiritual discernment. If we were to ask Jesus which example applies to us, the Samaritan or Mary, his answer would probably be yes. The important lesson in this passage is finding the right balance between those. There is value in contemplation and there is value in serving. Both are important, both are meaningful, both have significance at the core of our lives. The balance between them creates well-being and wholeness. There is a time to serve and there is a time to sit and take in. Even more so is the attitude with which we do these. If we come at either of these with an attitude of negativity, of resentfulness, of anger, of judgment, or feeling forced into it or obligated, then these distractions will cause us to miss the significance of our serving and our receiving. Neither will be effective toward building personal faith and strengthening our community. However, it is clear that for our own well-being and the wellness of our world, we need to be doing both sitting and serving in a balance that does not pull us apart, but makes us whole. Our call is to do all of this with love. Now, as more distractions come at us every day, every single day, as worries and fears, negativity moves in to pull us apart, individually and as community, it is imperative that we remain focused on the truth of love that values everyone, that cares about the well-being of others, a faith that is selfless and giving, positive and hope-filled, one that believes we have a legacy of goodness and wellness to leave those who come after us. Like Martha and Mary, we may respond differently and at different moments, and that's okay. What is most important is that we take part in the movement of love that changes the world. That we take part in that. We find our place in that. And perhaps today we sit together reflecting and finding inspiration in this place. And on another day we might be found serving in some capacity that touches others in some meaningful way. This is our faith in action that rises up above all of the distractions that come at us, that shines light through the darkness and holds hope high over all of that seeks to diminish justice and goodness. The late Representative John Lewis, whom you remember, was quoted once as saying, "Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get into trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble." And while those words offer an empowerment all of their own, what led up to that line is equally important and I think necessary for us to hear. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. May we each find our balance between doing and being for the cause of love, for the promise of God's presence with us in this journey, for the hope that has always been beyond the distractions of our world to abundance and peace in our souls and in our community. May we strive together to do and be what we can. Blessings and honor.